everyone, to this episode of Smarter Sourcing. I'm John Pavia, and today we are joined by Aleck Matambo, partner at BHAG AI Advisor in Chicago, and a seasoned veteran from various companies, which we're going to get into, and consulting firms. Aleck, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, John, thanks a lot. Really love your podcast and really excited about today's program.
That's good to hear. I'm always amazed to hear that someone when I hear people actually tuning in for this, I'm like, wow, you really watch it or listen to it. So, man, I love these interviews where someone who spent time at places like Google, which we'll get into, and places like E&Y Consulting and McKinsey, which we'll get into, because I think every person I've ever spoken to who has gone from consulting into the company or from a company into consulting, there's an aha moment where they say, wow, there's a difference. There's a difference being the advisor, being the operator, and it goes both ways. But my leadoff question for you is, I do want you to go through your career. How'd you end up where you're at today? But especially, how'd you end up in sourcing and procurement? Was that something that you were sitting around at university thinking about, saying, boy, this is what I really like to do, or just sort of fall into it?
I had a different entrance into procurement. At university, I focused on finance and IT, and my first job with Electrolux in Sweden was entirely focused on financial and IT systems. Though at one stage I was leaving Sweden, I was going to I'd offered from Daimler-Benz to join the e-procurement organization. And that was a new subsidiary they set up with a few of the other automotive players. I had no idea what procurement was, but I was enthralled by the idea of joining Daimler-Benz in Germany, then Holland. And I got into procurement and I realized that I absolutely loved it. And one of the few things that I could understand, and it understood me. So it made total sense. And the same stage also made a whole lot of consultants who were at Cognizant as well. And so it also provided me with an exposure to consultancy as well.
Well, what did you like about it? Like when you got into it, what did you, because my involvement in it, I was amazed at how it brings you into the most inner workings of a company to really get into its supply chain and sourcing and procurement. And it doesn't have a sexy name, but it gets you into everything. But what was your reason for liking what you were doing?
Yeah, it was the opportunity to make a difference. So when I joined, and as I said earlier on, it was really coming to e-procurement, e-auctions. And that was really revolutionizing the entire world of procurement, dramatically cutting down costs, right? And it was great to be able to engage with procurement directors, managers, and to be able to work with them to reduce their costs by 20, 30%, right? Because that totally changed the playing field. So I love that. And also at that stage, automotive was going into China, so low cost sourcing as well. And being able to be at the front seat of that and understand how that's happening and to see how the world's really a huge village and being able to make a difference in the cost and innovation, all that kind of stuff. So I thought it was transformational. I thought it was different. I thought it was exciting. And I could do it and I could, really make a difference and impact there.
And so then around 2007 is when you make the jump over to the consulting world and you end up at E&Y first, correct?
Yeah.
And you were there for a while, for about 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed being able to work at EY. I joined in 2007. And at that stage, EY had recently gone back into consulting. And being one of the first few people in the supply chain and procurement team was a big learning point for me. EY is a great organization, providing me with opportunities to work with a variety of global customers, all the way from US right across Europe. And just being able to be there, understand their procurement challenges, their pain points, and being able to really partner with organizations and deliver value was one of the key highlights. And I guess that's when I really fell in love with consulting. And they made a decision to move from EY over to McKinsey, which was another phenomenal journey and career highlight as well.
So before we go to McKinsey, I'm curious, you'd spent time at Daimler-Benz, and that was your first foray into procurement, correct? And then you go to E&Y and they're just getting back into consulting. And now the world is now turning to e-procurement. Now you spent time inside as an operator, and now you go to E&Y who's getting back into consulting, and it's a whole new world now that they're coming into with e-procurement. Do you recall anything where you're listening to people at E&Y and you're saying to yourself or saying to them, okay, but in the real world, like when you're there doing it, there's a disconnect between the advice at a conceptual level and reality at the practical level.
Yeah, there were moments where there was that disconnect, right? But I think what I really enjoyed about EY was, yes, were there some differences from the real world? Absolutely. But they're really attuned with understanding what would make a difference for the client, what would stick, and working with the client, really partner with the client to make solutions that would deliver value for them, and then help them to execute on them afterwards. So it wasn't just a strategy and walking away, but it was more of, let's jointly develop a strategy and then let's jointly deliver on it, right? So therefore ensuring that we attain real value for the organization.
So then you go to McKinsey, and you said to me before that was sort of a pivotal moment in your career. What was so pivotal about your experience at McKinsey?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, what I loved about McKinsey, and I really enjoyed my time at McKinsey. I was there for nearly a decade. And a couple of key things. So McKinsey has a totally different mindset. And their mindset that I fully adhered to when I was there was really about being transformational, right? So trying to help clients see further than they could see. How does this entail? It's entailed about spending time with the client, understanding their key and their core pain points. Working with their senior executives, partnering with them, and then building a vision of where they could really be, not just trying to have incremental changes, but more of transformational changes as well. And I did that in a variety of industries, mainly within procurement and supply chain operations, but also within general transformation as well. So the value was really about driving efficiency, designing new services. It wasn't just about what happens at procurement, rather trying to identify what matters in the boardroom, right? And trying to address those topics. So innovation, resilience, growth, and how procurement can be a true strategic enabler for the organization rather than just a cost center.
So that was my next question. How do you, and when you come in, if tomorrow you walk into a situation, a new company, either as a consultant or as the chief procurement officer, what would be your strategy of getting the culture, the mindset to see procurement as something more than just a cost center?
Yeah. So a couple of key things. The first key thing is mindset. A lot of people misunderstand the value, or organizations appreciate the real value that procurement can bring. It being a strategic enabler, helping an organization to really deliver on their corporate goals. So one first key things I'll do is partnership. I'll partner with executives and again, understand what their core issues are, understand what their strategy is going forward, and then determine where and how procurement can provide value. Number two, again, within the mindset, looking at data. And the thing of data, not just as information, but rather as a compass, as a guide in terms of where the opportunities are, what we need to change. Three, then I'll look at transformation thinking in terms of we've got all these new technologies, AI and everything else. How do you use the transformational value of AI, all these other new digital tools to change the direction of the organization, change the world, not only change the workflows, but to rethink, to reimagine the workflows, to reimagine the value procurement is bringing in, and then deliver on that. So help an organization understand the transformational value of procurement and to stop thinking of procurement as just a cost center.
You mentioned data. And at what point along your journey and maybe it was just an iterative thing that built upon each other, but was there a moment, was there an experience where you said to yourself, boy, it's all about the data, and data started not taking over, but just started playing a preeminent role in your decision-making process?
Yeah, look, so in lots of cases, data is just seen as a mirror, right? And should rather be seen as a compass. In lots of cases, the only key thing that mattered was cost savings, right? And cost savings, yes, are important, but if your negotiation is focused just on kind of cost, then most likely you're also negotiating out innovation. So the idea of success for organizations would really be around partnerships, partnering with suppliers. And partnering with suppliers means that understanding that data and cost savings is one aspect of it, but looking at the long-term value as well. The long-term value being how do we partner with this supplier to, one, be at the right price point, but two, to have the right relationship, symbiotic, mutually beneficial relationship as well, so that they can provide us insights from what they see with their other clients, what's happening in the marketplace, so we can enhance our commodities, our products as well, which then provides us with longer term value. And that partnership, I think, is even more important right now when you look at all the global challenges, because having strong partnerships with some of our key suppliers means that our resilience is going to be stronger. Our ability to adapt and to respond to market challenges is going to be better, and it's going to be faster as well. So moving away from just data to do some cost cutting to thinking about creating strong supply partnerships, that's a difference maker, because that's when procurement teams can really demonstrate their value to organization and also help to drive an organization and then serve capabilities forward.
So you don't need to use actual names, obviously, but I'm guessing that in your experience, especially when you were a consultant and you were going from company to company, that it was often the case you'd come into a situation and one of the things you would identify as an issue is that your procurement people weren't viewing their either stakeholders or their strategic suppliers as real partners, and just, especially with the suppliers, just seeing them as, someone that you do a like transaction with. And then you have the task of trying to change their mentality. So I'm guessing, do you have a good story of that you can use anonymous names as to where the improvement of the relationship really had a material positive impact on the overall process?
Yeah, look, multiple places. And I think historically, part of the challenge was how procurement professionals thought of themselves, right? They thought of themselves as, and I guess a few still do this right now, they think of themselves as a back office function, order takers, and they're just going to have to negotiate when they're told and establish a contract when they're told to, which has value, but I think that's taking the lowest form of value that procurement can bring. A couple of times when I was as a consultant, even some of the firms I've recently worked with, we had to redefine the value of procurement. I'll give one good example, actually. So the organization, in this case, felt that they had no power against suppliers in negotiations. Suppliers would literally charge them 3 times the market, and they call it the premium of working with them. And I spent time with the team, one, understanding that actually we had more power than them, but we need to redefine the relationship with suppliers. But first of all, we need to redefine the relationship within ourselves and within our organization, so our organization could understand the value that we're bringing. And then spending time redefining the relationship with suppliers. So again, getting them to understand that we're negotiating across 3 areas. 1 being the cost, but 2 being governance and support, and 3 being performance management and partnership and all of that kind of stuff. The impact of that was that it redefined how our suppliers engaged with us. It redefined how seriously they took us, and also enabled us to, in some cases, even change suppliers and find suppliers who were more willing to play the partnership role than ones that were not fully understanding the value that they were getting from partnering with us.
Anything in particular that you feel, I left my mark in this way?
I had the privilege of being engaged in a couple of programs. And one of them was around 2019 during COVID, and we had a lot of factories in China. And for a variety of reasons, we had to move them out of China. So I was engaged in the program of identifying which other countries we could move them to, and determining the kind of surrounding ecosystem as well. So suppliers, which ones need to be moved as well, how to engage the suppliers to be supportive of the program, determining the impact, the financial impact of the program as well, the value we get from it. And so there's a mixture of geopolitical challenges, operational challenges as well, and whilst all this in the midst of the pandemic. What I loved about it as well was how a variety of teams came together into kind of our war room. So we had finance there, we had legal, we had supply chain operations, and all of us really operated through a drumbeat to ensure that the program was successful and to ensure that we could move our factories without negatively impacting supply of our products to the US market.
The war room practice, was that something that they only did during this period, or was that a practice that they always had, where they bring everybody in, the stakeholders, the sourcing guys?
So I'd imagine that in other scenarios, this practice was brought about because of very collegial atmosphere. What worked for us here in this case was that it was filled with senior executives. So we had decision-making authority, and we could escalate to additional senior executives if required. We had a consistent drumbeat. So every morning at a certain time, we'd meet and go over the latest status. We had a good plan, so we knew exactly what we had to do. And it was an absolute burning platform.
You then make the jump over to Google, and that was around 2020. What prompted you to make that move?
Yeah. So funny story. I was really happy I'm at Dow in this case. And Google came knocking and they said, we're just talking and there's nothing wrong with talking. I said, absolutely, let's talk. A few months later on, I asked them if we're just talking, why am I signing a contract? But jokes aside, look, and Google's always been one of those companies that I desperately wanted to work for. I thought it was a fantastic place. And it was the chance to build their procurement capabilities. So
Was it what you thought it was going to be? Did it meet expectations, exceed expectations?
yeah, I mean, look, it's an absolutely phenomenal company. Lots of great people there, and the scale of what they're addressing, the scale of what they're working on is mind-boggling. So, absolutely recommend it to anyone who's got an opportunity to go and work there. Absolutely go for it. Lots of great people, lots of great teams. But it's like anything, this was us there during some challenging periods as well. And towards the end of COVID. And so to us, and also as well with AI exploding, and there's a huge focus on procurement to reduce costs.
As the entire world, but now let's focus on the world of sourcing and procurement, embrace AI more and more. What's your words of caution to your colleagues that are out there in the sourcing world that are trying to figure out the right way to work with AI?
Yeah. And this is part of the challenge of it, right? So let me just kind of describe this way. Right now, there are a huge amount of AI tools out there. And in some cases, it's bewildering or confusing with all the tools, not knowing which ones to use. And there's huge pressure from executives to just embark on AI programs. One. Number two is that a lot of AI programs, according to some reports from MIT, Gartner, 85, 95%, I'm sure, of AI programs, transformations fail or do not hit their ROI for a variety of reasons. I think culture and all that kind of stuff is part of it. However, despite those first two things, I think there's huge opportunity within AI. What I think organizations should do, one is to really partner with companies to develop a strong AI strategy that's fully aligned to your business strategy, and is focused on delivering ROI, return on investment. Once you've got that clarity, then you understand the why, the way, and the how we're going to utilize AI. It's then important to engage with the organization, understand what those, 3-5 really prioritize areas where you're going to implement AI, build a strong change management case, a strong why with the organization, so they understand, we use AI in this area. This is the impact it's going to have on us, the change impact. This is the value we're going to get from it. And hey, this is the necessary reskilling or upskilling the staff are going to get in order for them to see that AI is there to not replace them. So they don't see AI as the enemy, but rather to augment their capabilities. So they see AI as an enabler, and they see the reskilling and the upskilling as essential tools for them to get better and be more conversant with AI as well. I think that will really help with the kind of low or challenging adoption rates that AI faces right now. And then lastly, I see a lot of the AI tools right now really focused on improving existing workflows, right? I think that's a challenge, right? Because if you go back to email, when email first came about, at that stage was very exciting, but after a year or two, whatever it is, everyone had email. It's just a normal way of doing business. And I see a lot of the AI tools right now are going to be table stakes next year. So what you really need to think about is, how do I get to use the more transformational nature of AI to really grow my business 4x, 10x? That's where the true value is. Right now, we're dealing with low-hanging fruits. The companies that are going to succeed are those ones who identify how AI transforms the operating model, transforms the way they do business. And that's where success lies. And that's where the true value of AI will be.
So being someone who spent time both in consulting and at large companies, do you think there's a metric out there that's being used and maybe too much stock being put in that metric as to whether or not a certain sourcing and procurement practice is being successful or not?
I'll put it differently. I'll say that in lots of cases, there are too many metrics, which makes it confusing for the team. And those plethora of metrics are not always fully measured. And obviously we know what's not measured is not done. So for organizations out there, the key things to determine what are those 3 to 5 metrics, high-level metrics they need to follow and execute against them. For me, key metrics, absolutely, we will need cost reduction. Yes, it has to be there. But don't think of it as just as a price, but think of it total cost, right? TCO. I think that should be it. But that has to be linked with not only the short-term perspective, but from the long-term. How do we manage it from a long-term perspective? Two, suppliers. I think your supplier relationships, your partnerships is going to be key. So think about that. What metrics you have to measure how well you engage with suppliers, to measure how well your resilience strategies, your third-party risk management is, all that kind of stuff. I think is supremely important. Three, how procurement is able to contribute to the overall business as well, right? So what's the impact? And you can think of it in different ways. One really exciting program I did was a balance of trade program. And balance of trade was really about how procurement was able to open doors for our sales teams to engage with new companies as well, because they had the relationships that sometimes sales doesn't have. So really being able to open doors for your colleagues across risk and organization is important. And you need to think through, what other areas am I not even aware of right now where I can provide a value to the organization? As we know, there's so many shocks to the system. We've seen so many shocks the last couple of years. So shocks being pandemics, being geopolitical challenges, wars in different places, supply chain, bridges breaking down, and Suez Canal, and all sorts of places. So expect there to be more shocks. And the key thing you need to think about is, how do we ensure that we're agile, we're resilient, we're able to really support an organization, whatever the shock happens, from whether we have a war room, whatever it is, but just make sure you're ready to be front and center and lead an organization during those challenging times.
Well, this is all the time we have. But I tell you, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your time. And I look forward to staying in contact with you. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Hey, thanks a lot, John. And again, really happy to be on your podcast, and looking forward to hearing all the other episodes as well.
And to all of our listeners and viewers, this is John Pavia with Smarter Sourcing, and we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Take care.